Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Why I'm Still Here for Que Sigo Aquí series. This is your host, Isabel Garcia, founder of Estoy Aquí. And today we have a very special guest and friend, Stephanie Marrero. How are you, Stephanie?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And so today we're going to be talking about journal swapping. But
Mhm.
before we get into the topic and before we get to know even more about Stephanie, I want to let you, not like you all know, but more like a reminder as to why this series exists. The whole point of this series is to emphasize different community care strategies or tools that people in the community are already using to benefit their mental health and the mental health of the people around them. And so the question that we're posing to ourselves throughout this series is how can we take care of ourselves while also taking care of others? And so when thinking about that question, I thought, oh my gosh, I have to get Stephanie to this live to talk about this tool that I had no clue about. I had never heard about it before until she told me the story behind this practice
Mhm.
and how she uses it in her personal life. But before we get into that, I also want to give you the chance, Stephanie, to introduce yourself. So, can you tell us more about who you are and your work in the community?
Mhm. Yeah. So like my name is Stephanie. I'm a licensed certified social worker here in Massachusetts, and my work within human services alone has ranged. I've been in the field since I was about 17, kind of just working anywhere that took me. So I was at the YWCA for a while with, learning a lot on the crisis line there, and just really making my way in different places. So from youth build to domestic violence shelter to then community clinics, and just getting my feet wet, and learning that through this process of supporting others and providing for others, I was also starting to kind of heal myself at the same time, because I trauma response love to appease people, but I decided to do it on purpose. So it was no longer a trauma response more than it was an intentional decision. So through that, I've managed to just kind of create different spaces for myself that was tapering to different forms of caring for other people. So before I had Beneath the Healing, I actually had Beneath the Beauty, which was me doing photography and makeup, but bringing it together with the world of mental health, because at that time that was the space that I was, in a lot. So really, I'm just somebody that loves the idea of giving back, and supporting others through a process of healing that can feel very, just guarded and challenging.
Hmm. Yeah. And can you tell us a bit more also about Beneath the Healing? What type of services do you provide? What is
Yeah.
your mission of it?
Yeah. So for me, with Beneath the Healing, all I really want to do is just create a space that allows you to focus on the alignment of your mind, body, soul, and spirit through healing. So I started this with kind of facilitating, a journaling to heal group, which was introducing the idea of writing as a method of self healing, as an expression of self healing, right? Because there's so many different things that we can do to heal, and that was just one of them. And so that was how that kind of came to be. And I always had the name Beneath the Beauty still like on the back burner from the business that didn't work out. And I'm like, well, this is kind of just merging the worlds together for me. And currently I'm working, I've authored 2 books for kids, because that's the other thing. I want to be able to hit all the different populations, not just one. I love working with kids, and I love working with young adults, and adults as well, and just kind of working my way through everybody. But for me, the biggest piece is the advocacy, is the being able to communicate effectively from the age of a little kid all the way to an adult. It's one of the hardest things that it's just not ingrained in us. And a lot of us are unlearning the barriers around not communicating because it wasn't normalized. We weren't allowed to talk, especially culturally. We weren't allowed to talk about our feelings porque son poca vergüenza, so it's just something that is near and dear to my heart. So Beneath the Healing aims to just create different spaces for people to be able to come in and experience community and know that it's normal. One of the biggest things that I try to do is just go against the current. I don't do it on purpose, but I had to like really embrace that. For a long time I had this imposter syndrome because I'm covered in tattoos, and here I am, I cuss left and right, and I'm supposed to be this quote unquote professional person, and I'm just, I'm just going to embrace that. And what's the best way to do it than creating my own space for me, because there's not a mold that exists for me as it is. I had to make it myself. So Beneath the Healing just aims to help people in redefining who they are and aligning to their best self and what that means for them.
I love this concept of redefining and alignment.
Yes.
And I think is the perfect segue to this topic of journal swapping.
Yes.
Because first of all, what is that? Everybody is like, what is journal?
I love that.
What is that? And how did you learn about it?
So I can't say I found it anywhere. I more so than my husband and I, well, or I should say I decided and my husband followed suit, was really just a way to communicate. I've always been one to enjoy writing. I've always kept a journal or poetry or something since I was about 13. So writing was big for me. And after our daughter had gotten diagnosed with a kidney disease, we both handled that very differently. I wanted to talk about all the feelings, whereas my husband was like, nope, I'm powering through this. Like, and those responses were appropriate at the time because it got us through the moments. It was me kind of being nurturing and taking care of everything that was happening, and my husband handling business. So through that time, in the middle of the trauma, it was the right response to have. Afterwards, though, when we realized, okay, we're out of the hospital, we're home, and we're only relying on each other, there is a lot of miscommunication happening. There's a lot of tension in this space, and your way of handling this right now isn't meeting my needs, and vice versa. My husband wanted to kind of still just go with the emotions. He's like, okay, I got to go to work, I got to do things. And I'm just like, I can't just dive into a routine because emotionally I'm a mess and I need to talk about those things. And he's like, but if I talk about those things, then I'm going to be a mess and I won't be productive. So I was like, okay, well, what if we write it down? And we just put our words in a notebook and we remove the pressure, right? So we had one rule, is that we could not say anything mean or hurtful when writing. We always had to be very intentional, and we always had to speak with love, even if it was something difficult, right? So the way that it worked for us was, if I would write to him, I would prop the journal up, or I still do, prop the journal up. When he reads it, he just puts the journal down. So I know he saw it. And there's no time limit as to like when he has to respond or anything like that. It's just a matter of like, I said some words and I know you've seen it. And it gives me the time to, as I'm writing, I have to write on purpose. Like I'm making this permanent, especially me, I write in pen all the time. So it's like, I'm making this permanent. And this is something that will now exist in my external world that my kids can find. And if they find me writing permanent words to their father in a way that isn't coming from love, I can hurt them. So it forces me to be very intentional with writing. And so through that, he and I were able to really get through a really difficult time and recognize that our needs were different at the time. Our love languages definitely showed after that, that's for sure. And learning like, okay, we don't love the same. What does that look like? And so now I actually have a shared journal with my daughter, just to capture through the years. And I have a shared journal with my sister. And same thing, it's just things to be able to kind of look back on and leave behind, and just know that There's no time limit on these things. It's just a way of, I was thinking of you in this moment, and I want to be able to communicate with you in a different way.
I love this. I love this so much, because we are, and instead of saying, I'm going to say I instead of we, I was taught that there's only one effective way to communicate, and that is verbally. If you have a problem, you say it. If you have anything, is in school, everything is there is this dominant idea of what communication should look like for everyone, and it's usually also very neurotypical. And so it doesn't honor also neurodivergence, other ways of thinking or processing information. So for me, when you say, hey, like, I am doing this with my partner, with my sibling, with my child, different ages, different social identities, and it works. It works. Communication flows throughout the written word. But there is something that caught my attention. You said, I know when, like, when your partner has read it, read what you wrote, because they put it down.
So if the book, so if we prop it up, I usually prop it up like on our headboard, and he knows this is just a book, but he knows that okay, my wife wrote to me, and vice versa. And then when we read it, we just put it down, and that's it. It's because the other piece is communication is also nonverbal. It's body language. It's understanding. And I'm only going to speak as me and myself. I'd be feeling like my husband should know when I'm not okay. But that's not fair if I didn't even allow him to have access to the information in the first place. So I can't assume that he's going to know if I'm like this, that I'm mad, let alone mad at you didn't do the dishes. He can read, like, your body language tells me you're in a mood. And so now what's the matter? I don't feel like talking to you about it because I did all the things, I'm upset, but that's not fair because I didn't give him the information beforehand. So for him to be able to learn me and learn him, that's huge, to be able to pick up on those nonverbal cues. But there is no shame in saying, I like, this triggers me, and I need to walk away for a minute. Just yesterday, there was something that came up between he and I, and not no type of argument or anything, but just something that was said that I felt myself wanted to get very reactive. And I'm like, I need a minute. And I just had to turn and breathe, because I'm like, nope. And I'm like talking myself down and doing all the things that I do and everything. And I'm just like really paying attention to myself and saying, what is this response that I'm having, and slow it down. But that takes time. We couldn't do that, almost 6 years ago. 6 years ago, that I would have lost it. Who knows, but it's because we were in such a sensitive state. So when you're looking to jump on something so quick and get defensive and have this immediate reaction to someone else, you're working on impulsivity, and that, no matter what, impulsivity is coming from some type of your body is in danger. Your body is sensing danger. There's a trauma response happening there, whether or not you can recognize it as a trauma response, but it's happening to your body, and you cannot coherently rationalize anything until your heart rate and your breath is under control. That's just the science behind it. You have to calm those two down so your body feels safe to then give a coherent response. So when you're writing, and this is why I also push like automatic writing, if I want to write to him and I'm feeling all these things that I'm like, I cannot speak from a place of love, then I need some automatic writing. I need to purge everything out. What I call word vomit is purge everything out and get all my thoughts out to see the hot mess expressed and give myself permission to write that and let it out, because those are my emotions. And then I'm able to calm down because I've put it somewhere. It's not like I'm invalidating what I'm feeling. I put it somewhere. I put a pin in that. And now I can write intentionally to someone else.
So as I am hearing you talk, there is a very intentional process that goes into the journal swapping itself, but also
Yeah.
there seems to be skill building within the journal swap.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, that's fascinating. To me, it's just fascinating to me. And while doing that process, there's, of course, and we already mentioned the benefits to mental health. But like you mentioned, communication, so conflict resolution, trust building, also recognizing our responses and how to resist urgency and impulsivity.
Yeah.
Like, are there any more? Are there any other benefits that you have seen?
Yeah. It teaches you how to be patient. You ever had somebody, like, you text somebody and they leave you on read for a while and you're just like, I know you saw my message, bro. Like, what's good? I know you saw what I wrote to you and it's been like a month and a half and I haven't gotten anything back. It forces you to put something out and let it go. Don't get fixated on what you said, the response that you're gonna get. You can't go into it with the expectation, because now that intention is almost selfish to an extent, right? This is a space that we want to capture love in all forms. And if I'm going into this I'm going to write to you with the expectation of a specific response, then one, you're removing the purpose out of it. And two, now you're just going to be sitting, because let me tell you, my husband be forgetting. So we don't put this an insane amount of pressure on it either, because I forget too. So it's just matters like, oh, that's right. And we'll be like, who wrote last? Was it you? No, it was you. Oh, well, my bad. And so then through the years, we've managed to now we start adding little pictures and things like that into it. And it just becomes like this collection of a junk journal almost. But it allows for you to build that patience and also understand the difference between, because being selfish isn't bad either. Like I said, there's that process of, if you feel like in that moment you're not in the right headspace to write to somebody out of words of love, then don't. Focus on what you got to do. But then if there is a moment that I'm like, I just feel like reassuring him today or reassuring her today and giving some love and some words of affirmation, I want it to come from me. So I definitely do think that building patience and the resilience against the immediate satisfaction of something, because you don't know when the response will come and it's always a surprise, is a really great benefit. And then you're making memories. Now, you can enjoy this, or if this is, you do this with somebody and it's a romantic relationship doesn't end up working out, then there's that aspect too to kind of think about that. Then what do you do with it? Because the first time I ever had a shared journal with somebody was actually in middle school, when it was cool. We used to pass notes. And I don't know if my Brookings people can remember this, but we used to pass notes all the time. And then we all just started walking around with notebooks. Like, I had a notebook with my best friend. I had a notebook with my boyfriend at the time. And I remember going, the boyfriend I had at the time, I would go through all of it and just relive the way he loved me. Right. And I'm just like, oh my God. But then I would come across a page that was like, oh, you're an asshole. And I'm like, that's why this happened. And so it was inspired by having that, but I wanted to remove I don't want to remember the pain, because even when romantic relationships end, something had you in that space to begin with. It's okay to relive the positive out of that, but sometimes the bad can really outweigh that. So just being mindful of, this is something that will live forever until you destroy it. And it's a double-edged sword. It could be beautiful for my kids and my great grandkids down the road to be like, oh, my grandparents, they love each other. Or it could be like trauma, delete, erase.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. That's there's also that generational historical aspect to, as you were saying. It can pass down from generation to generation, preserving the journals throughout time. And then your child might do it with their if they decide to have children, they do them with and so on and so on. Yeah. So I think that's also that historical generational aspect is also a beautiful, a beautiful thing. Thing.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking, can you tell us specific a scenario and get us through almost a step by step? Because I can see there is flexibility within the process, but
Yeah.
I still want to get a picture of how it will look like for me. Let's say to share a journal with my mom. Let's
Yeah.
we just lost, well, I actually lost my dad a couple of weeks ago. And my mom and we are in different grieving
Yeah.
stages, let's put it
Yeah.
that way. And so, how can we use this practice, this tool?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us like an image or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, so I've always been one to just collect notebooks that are too pretty to write in. That's just me. Maybe somebody out there can relate. It's like, oh, but it's too nice. So for us, I had this one notebook that I didn't know what to do with, and I'm like, okay, so let's kind of just start with that. There has to be a conversation around it, right? And when I think about doing it across like generations, that could be a little bit challenging. So when I think about my daughter and I, it's very different because now I have this a certain way with my husband, and his comprehension is different than my 7-year-old daughter. So I had to kind of step back and be patient and recognize that I'm guiding this with my daughter, right? Which means, so when my daughter writes the same 7 things in the same page over and over and takes it the whole page, I have to be okay. I have to be okay. In the moment, it might be like, all right, Evelyn, you that's what you said. And then I give it to her, and immediately she's giving it back to me like the same day. And I'm like, okay, but I'm building this. She doesn't understand. So I have to be okay with guiding it. So that's the first thing I would say, is if you're the one introducing it, be comfortable in guiding what this could look like, and make room for moments that could feel like it's messing up, that could feel like it's not working out, that it could feel like you're missing the mark, and you're still miscommunicating. Make room for that, because this is different, right? So that's the first thing, is be okay kind of taking a lead on it if you're the one introducing it, and make room, give yourself grace if it doesn't work out right away. The next thing is understanding kind of like when you have a conversation around that and you're ready to introduce it, what do you want it to look like? Right. So one of the things that I told my daughter is she's learning how to write. So you can draw pictures in there. If you want to put pictures of things in there, that's fine. It's just more so a catch-all. And because not everybody is great with expression with words, but people are great with expression with pictures, photography, drawing, lyrics of a song that make me think of you, things like that, quotes, scriptures, whatever works for anybody. It's just, what's your way of communicating? What's the best way that you can speak? So understanding that, so you also then know what to kind of expect. So it could be like, hey, Mom, like I'm probably going to write like 18 pages the first time, and I'm going to let it all out. And, so just so you know, and Mom might be like, okay, well, I might give you 2 sentences and 5 scriptures, and that's okay, because now you understand what to expect. So that helps reduce a little bit of the anxiety around that, right? So the next one would be expectations. Set those ground rules together. Like my husband and I said, we cannot talk about being mad at each other. We cannot talk about any disagreements that we've had. That is not allowed, because that's what we're trying to not fuel right now. Whereas I would think like with this with my mom and I, there might be difficult things that I want to talk about, and this probably feels like the only avenue. So make room for that and recognize that, how can I do this in a way that feels safe, right? And so if it's something that could feel like something could be triggering, and you come home and you see that the journal's up and it's like, oh, okay, hold on. Do you have a process for yourself to create a safe space first before you read that? Because you don't know what you could be. I knew that with my husband, it's always, he's going to love on me. That's what I'm getting. You know what I'm saying? So if I know that this could be something that could be a little bit heavier, what am I going to do before that? It's like, okay, so Mom, like when I give you this notebook, make sure that you feel you're somewhere that you're that you feel private. You got to play whatever music you need in the background. You got to take some time, and I'll leave you alone after the fact, and vice versa. So definitely setting those ground rules, and creating that safe space for yourself. And truthfully, once you find that rhythm, then it kind of just flows. Being okay with the waiting, like we talked about, and some of the things that like the anticipation of what the response is going to be. Be mindful that if we drop 18 pages of like this is the BS I done dealt with my entire life. And this is how I feel. Like it might be a little bit of processing, and take breaks if needed. Take breaks. And it's like, okay, this has felt a little bit overwhelming, and maybe I'm feeling like pressure on myself because things are coming up that I wasn't ready for. Right. So I'd say like maybe right now, if this is something that you do want to introduce, focus it on solely what's happening right now, and the way that this process looks like for the both of you, and the grieving process looks like for the both of you. And if it looks different, it's like, hey, these are the things that I kind of need for myself right now. You know, this is what I'm doing to help myself. And, you know, how's it going for you? And what are you doing, and what's helping you? Because the other thing about that is that I noticed with my daughter that I had to start doing with her is I had to start asking specific questions, because I was going to get the same journal entry for the next like 4 years. So I would then ask a specific question at the end if I knew I needed to guide it a little bit.
I love first of all, the flexibility around, let's make this work for us.
Yeah.
We have, depending on whatever it is, the relationship dynamic that you have with this person.
Yeah.
The boundaries, the different boundaries, how are we going to process this?
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be something that we're going to use to initiate you know, very specific conversation, or it's a very general, or I also love the different forms of communication, that it doesn't have to be necessarily an essay. It can really be song lyrics or a picture of drawing. And there can also be a follow-up to it. If there is more of a, hey, I wonder what you meant by that. Or again, there is that flexibility around boundaries. There is a process that people get into in order to actually apply the strategy. Well, I just love everything about it. I don't know. It's just, to me, it is creative and it is accessible. And we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Before we started the live.
Yeah.
Accessibility of this tool, that it could literally be a notebook. It could just be a notebook.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, you create amazing journals. You create amazing journals.
Thank you.
And that can also be part of the process, creating a very cute, pretty journal. But for accessibility purposes, there's also the simplicity of it. Let's just get this notebook out and let's start.
Exactly.
Do it, just applying this practice in our lives, and let's see how it goes.
Right.
I like that aspect of it.
My dog sees a dog. I'm sorry. This is what he does. When my husband's not home, he don't listen to me.
The dog wants to do journal swapping. It's okay. But I wanna end I could speak about this forever with you. That's, you know, we could speak for hours about this. And yet we have to end. But I want to give you the opportunity to share about your work. Is there anything, any events, anything coming up that you want to promote? How do we get in contact with you for the different services you provide, etc.?
He is so disrespectful. So yeah, no, this was wonderful. And thank you so much again for having me. So truthfully, I was going to be having another cohort of Journaling to Heal, but I decided to postpone that because I am putting together something a little bit different that I'm excited about. So I don't have all of the details, more as, then it'll be a type of webinar thing. And I'm really excited about that. It's something that I when we talk about accessibility, this is what I feel like is my responsibility in this moment, to make this conversation more readily accessible and take a little bit of Journaling to Heal and make it more of an open conversation that's not just a closed group to 8 people. And so recognizing that there is kind of a cap on that looks a little bit differently because there's a cost on it, right? So I want to play with that and kind of put that out to the community very differently. So I'm excited about that. Reaching me, I have Beneath the Healing on Facebook, but also at beneaththehealing.com. I'm always looking forward to just kind of connecting with community people and just talking a little bit more about all things healing and the way that that looks for everybody, and really recognizing this an individual process for every single person. But I mean, aside from that, that's all I got.
Also, you mentioned this at the beginning, you're an author. So
yes.
How can we get your books? I know
Yes.
you have 2 books, I think.
I do. So I have,
Yeah.
for kids. So I have Ellie the Meditation Elf, which is focusing on teaching kids about anxiety and using meditation as a coping strategy. And then Ollie the Calming Elf, which is more informative around ADHD and what that looks like, and also speaks to some of the different types of mechanisms and tools and techniques to support kids with ADHD and understanding that. So they're both, again, child advocacy, giving kids the right language, psychoeducation, and they're both available on Amazon.
Perfect. And in my case, you can support me by buying merchandise. I am now, I guess, a clothing designer or something.
They're great.
But you might notice that Stephanie is wearing in the flyers, the promotional posts that we are doing, that is already out there on social media. You're gonna notice she's wearing a shirt that says "Capitalism Sucks," which is true. That's why I wrote it. Yeah. That's why I designed it that way. And also, you are wearing a beanie.
Yeah.
With the Aqui logo.
Yes.
If you like those types of merchandise, if you want a shirt or a hoodie with that type of messaging, you can totally go to Bonfire, to Aqui store, bonfire.com. And you can find mugs, bags, a bunch of different products.
So many options.
All these different social justice, based, mental health based messaging. And also, you can also donate to Estoy Aquí. If you go to my website, estoy-aquí.org, you are able to see there is a donate button. That donation, any donation, and any money from the merchandise goes to funding my cultural responder program, which is where I go to the community, to the barbers, librarians, hairstylists, and talk about mental health with them. And so all those donations, the money goes to the printing of materials and the stipends that I offer participants in the community to take this training.
That's amazing.
Having said that, thank you so much, Stephanie, for saying yes to the live, modeling for my merchandise.
I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, and for introducing us to this tool, to this practice.
Absolutely.
I wish you all a nice day, and I'll see you next week.